to discuss how biology, deviant behavior, and the world of sport, recreation, and physical activity work together. A biological and or a biosocial point of view in regards to understanding deviant behavior goes back quite a ways. It's a very, very old and historic way of looking at and understanding deviant behavior. And it's based off the assumption that deviance, or acting abnormally, is a result of some sort of internal physical predisposition. The idea was that if you were a criminal or someone who did quote-unquote bad things, it's because of something inside you. There's some sort of biological component to it. A biosocial explanation expands on that just a little bit more and starts really trying to bring together the idea that biology and this abnormality or this inclination to be violent or deviant can interact with a social environment. And so what the result is that the individual's biological disposition, in conjunction with their environment, usually something like a socioeconomic status, engages in the world of sport for us to result in some sort of deviant behavior within sports. There are a couple different ways that a biological and or a biosocial explanation of deviant behavior can really be exemplified within the world of sport. The first one is this whole idea of what's called the safety valve effect in hockey. And this is just one myth that's been very, very common within the world of sports. And the idea is that you're going to let folks fight in hockey because they have a natural predisposition to want to fight. But you let them fight in small increments so that you don't have a larger fight, which is inevitably going to result and possibly be more violent. Again, this is based off the assumption that the individuals that are part of this game of ice hockey inevitably are going to be involved in a fight. So how do we manage that? And that's what, in terms of letting people fight, that's what they mean by the safety valve effect. Another myth in the world of sports is this thing called the carryover effect, or the idea that some men are predisposed to violent behavior, and that they participate in violent sports as a way of addressing that. But because they participate in violent sports, it tends to exacerbate this natural inclination to be violent. And so as a result, once that switch is flipped upward and turned on, they have a tough time shutting it down off the field. And as a result, this is one possible explanation for violence against women, children, or other individuals. Both of these myths are very common in modern society in regards to thinking about violence or deviance within sport. However, what we've noticed is that even though we talk about the safety valve effect or this carryover effect to explain some of these violent behaviors, there is little to no support empirically for any one of these hypotheses. So now we start looking and examining more in depth a biological or a biosocial explanation of deviant behavior. And there are some very basic concepts associated with a biological explanation, and one is this idea of body types. And this goes back many, many centuries, but the idea was that certain body types are going to, again, be predisposed to certain types of behaviors, especially violent behaviors. So those individuals that had larger head sizes, or you have very large arms and legs, or very well defined and very sort of thick muscular development, these individuals were more likely to be deviant. And this goes back to, even for those of you that are interested in kind of early criminology and things like that, Lombroso and all the different body types and how that was associated with criminality. For us, this whole body type articulation of a biological explanation of deviant behavior is kind of associated with the dumb jock hypothesis. A lot of people thought for a long time, and if you think about if you've ever seen old movies and the sort of caricature of the athlete, maybe especially a football player, was this very, very large, unintelligent person. Well, that dumb jock hypothesis comes out of this idea of the mind-body dichotomy. What it said was, if you use your body for productivity, then that's probably because you were not terribly smart. Or you could use your mind and your intellect to move things forward. And so those people that were laborers or those kind of traditionally blue-collar type jobs were associated with with less intelligence. So this dumb jock hypothesis is actually related to this mind-body dichotomy, that if you use your body to do a certain thing, which usually results in increased muscle development and things like that for those people that are laborers, then how your body is shaped is one sort of archaic way of predicting deviant behavior. And this goes back to the early 1900s. Goddard was talking about feeble-mindedness and how those people that were feeble-minded were more likely to be involved in criminal or deviant behavior. And what's really important about this idea of feeble-mindedness for a lot of folks, again, that represent this particular position, it's that for a very, very, very long time, people assumed that because the ability to engage in deviant or violent behavior was part of someone's biology, that means that could be passed from parent to child, and that cycle would never really ever stop. And so, for a long time, we've thought, we developed a vocabulary early in the 1900s, 1920s, even through the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, that was representative of this idea of being a quote-unquote bad seed. If you've ever heard that phrase before, it's kind of the idea that that might have been the ability to engage in deviant or violent acts is associated with probably some sort of biology or parental influence. When you think about feeble-mindedness and athletics, it's a very difficult relationship, because if you look at modern athletics, especially organized team sports, they're very complicated in terms of their strategies. But for a lot of people, they think of those that are involved in either elite amateur athletics or professional sports as, well, this is the only thing that they had. This is the only thing that they could do. They were sort of quote-unquote predisposed to having to be a part of the world of sport to be productive members of society. Another way to really think about this idea, kind of from a biological or a pathological point of view, is a lot of people talk about sports gambling or just gambling problems as clinical problems that really need to be addressed from a medical point of view. And we're not saying that's necessarily bad, but anytime you start talking about the institution of medicine addressing some of these particular problems, it usually is rooted in this basic idea that there is some sort of biological antecedent for how and why people engage in the types of behaviors that they engage.